Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Life in Comedy. I'm your host, Will Beckton. This is a podcast about comedy, and I'm very excited about today's guest, as you can probably tell. The Sklar Brothers are the first stand-ups I've had on the show, which is great because it allows me to go from 0 stand-ups to 2 in one episode. I've known these guys for a long time, and it was great talking to them. I am here, Jason and Randy Sklars, a.k.a. the Sklars.
Sklar Brothers,
whatever,
whatever you want to call us.
In fact, I went ahead and threw a plural on your last name, even when I was...
It's just Jason Sklars. I like that. Well, so there was if we're jumping right into it, there was a guy who used to run the comic strip. Did he own it?
Yeah.
Lucian Hold in New York, back in New York in the 90s. And whenever he saw us walk in...
It's like I never took him to be a particularly funny guy. And he ran it when Eddie Murphy was there and Seinfeld was there. He was like 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s and 90s.
And then he got sick and died. And so we kind of caught him in the tail end of his life when he was very thin, very frail, but had an air of high status. Always wore a suit. Whenever we'd walk in the bar, he would say, "Hello, boys,"
to the two of us.
Fair. He loved us, but in a way that he kind of gives you a little grief. There was a gentle, loving ribbing that he get. And we're new, we're young, and so... We were boys when we were
hello,
there.
boys.
Hello, boys. So one time... Was it you who walked in? Randy came in early.
I was just sitting there early before Jason.
I was coming from a date or something to meet him to come do a spot.
And he walked by and looked at me and was like, "Hello, boys." I'm like, "It's just me." And I thought that was so fun. I'm like, if you're doing this on purpose, it's really funny.
If you're just by reflex, when you see a Sklar, just your mind goes to boys.
Hello, boys.
And you need to check in a little bit more.
So that actually kind of dovetails with, I had 2 questions about you guys starting stand-up. Did you guys start in St. Louis? Or where?
We did.
You did?
We did.
Wow. Was there ever a consideration, was it always going to be the 2 of you?
Yeah, we never even talked about it.
Okay.
Never even talked about.
We just assumed it would be
should
the
I
two
go
of
on
us.
stage or should she go on stage? And by the way, we were only watching singular comedians at the time.
Yeah.
We were comedy nerds in the 80s before people were comedy nerds, before that whole culture even surrounded
The
stand-up.
Rodney Dangerfield Young Comedian Special with Seinfeld and Robert Townsend and Bob Nelson and Sam Kinison. And I mean, that...
The Partners in Crime stuff. I love that stuff. Are you guys Stephen Wright guys?
Stephen Wright. We loved Gary Shandling. And of course, he loved Letterman. I loved Letterman and Carson, but really Letterman was our guy.
Kevin Meaney. We were huge. Kevin, mainly because of his willingness to just dive into the silliness of life. So here's a guy in a suit with a bow tie singing, "I don't care, I don't care." And you're just like, what is he doing? He just sang a song for 5 minutes. The joy, the silliness.
And by the way, he was not killing.
Oh.
And Seinfeld, people didn't know who Seinfeld was. And we thought,
I
remember going to see him at the Westport Playhouse in St. Louis, which is 1,100 seats or whatever. It was kind of in the round almost. And we're like, how come more people don't know about this guy?
Well, that was our thing. We walked around.
We're the only people who are going to know.
We're going to go to the grave thinking Seinfeld was great and no one else is going to know.
Nobody else. But he was amazing.
So we were obsessed. I mean, we were to the point where our parents' friends would come over to our parents' house to play bridge.
Oh, yeah. I love bridge.
12 years old.
Do you know how to play bridge? That's amazing.
I mean, it's dying. Our generation killed bridge.
Gone.
Yeah.
But it was a way for, to have a social evening, a dinner, and then
games. Strategy with cards with partners. It's cool.
So our parents' friends would come over and they'd say, "What's going on with you guys?" And because we were just so obsessed with these stand-up specials, we would work stand-up bits into regular conversation just to get laughs out of people.
Let's deal with the shower radio. Dance on a glass.
You guys throw some Emo Phillips in there. Do you figure out a way to work that?
Who we later met and worked with Emo Phillips.
Crazy Emo Phillips story.
But so we were really into it early on.
But we were like, let's do it. But it was never like, all right, I'll do it and then you do it. It was like, let's just do this thing that we saw.
Or you didn't rock, paper, scissors.
No.
Who's going to go up first?
Or who's going to be the funny man and who's going to be the straight man? Am I going to rein you in in the same way that the Smothers Brothers?
I guess it's in the most Twinsian way ever. We both were just like, let's both be front men. Let's both be funny. Let's try. We didn't even have that discussion.
Yeah.
We just said, this is it.
Wow.
There was a talent show in our high school when we were freshmen, not even a talent show. It was like a Fall Follies sort of I guess it was a talent show. We signed up to do stand-up. People were doing like some sketch. People were singing, some bands, some dancing. The hosts were doing like Monty Python sketches, which were really funny and cool. And we're like, we're going to do original comedy mixed in with some bits that we loved from, we didn't know, like, you can't do that, but just did it.
That might not even stop
some
people.
Well, the truth of it is, like, you see somebody doing an entire Monty Python sketch and you're like, well, what's the difference?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you really shouldn't do a Monty Python sketch, but if you're honoring it, so for kids who didn't know anything about that, we're like, oh, we can do these jokes.
Yeah. Truth is, our material that we wrote about the school did better than even the material we were aping. So,
well, that's like the Hello Cleveland kind of thing, like.
Totally. It's that moment where you're sort of authentic to the room and connecting more specifically with that audience. I mean, comedy is about connecting with an audience always.
It's fun. And we got a tape of it and we're like, well, that was awesome. And then our friend in Kansas.
You guys have the tape of the first time?
Yeah, I think we have the tape of the second time. Maybe next year that we did it. We don't have the tape of the first one.
Still pretty good.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
It's pretty crazy. And our friend in Kansas City was like, he was doing comedy sports, and he said,
"Oh yeah, I did comedy sports in New York." Yeah.
Did you really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
fun, cool. It's like, whose line is it anyway?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, short form.
He said they're doing a young comedian special. They want to put it together for the Disney Channel. Do you have any tape of you doing stand-up? We said yes. We just did it. So we had the guy who did our bar mitzvah tape. He was the only guy who had 2 VCRs connected to each other to make dubs and stuff.
Yeah, you can make a dub.
So because everybody was making mixtapes, like cassette tapes.
Right, but not video tapes.
Yeah, that was a different
You had
level.
to work at a production company sort of a thing, which didn't really exist. Certainly not in St. Louis, Missouri. And he made a copy of it, and we sent it off to this production company in Los Angeles on Beverly Boulevard somewhere. Okay, they're not there now. Rubin and Core was the name of the production company. And we thought, all right, we're going to send this off and we'll never hear from it. It's literally dropping.
Oh, so your expectations were actually tempered as.
Oh, we were like, this is like dropping a basketball into a volcano. We'll never hear from it or see it ever again. And then a few months later, they called us back and they're like, we looked through literally hundreds and hundreds of tapes, and you guys were some of the best that we saw, in the top 10 of people that we saw. We really want you to be a part of this thing, but you can't steal material. You got to do all original material.
Yeah.
And then create a scenario where you're commenting on what he's doing, and they gave us a bunch of notes that we wouldn't figure out for decades.
But they did say you need to go up next Tuesday and make a new tape.
Yeah.
At your local comedy club
with original,
all original,
all
original.
Wow.
So we called our comedy club. And they're like, how old are you? We said 15 at the time because we went from 14 to 15.
Christ. And they said, no.
You can't get, it's a bar. We serve alcohol. You can't
let you in here.
So we called the production company back and said, they
said no.
I remember this whole exchange. We're like, they said no. And he said, hang on. And the guy on the line said, hey, I'll call you right back. And literally the phone rang 2 minutes later, and it wasn't that guy. It was the club saying, you're up on Thursday.
Wow.
So he called them and was like,
it was a Tuesday. I'll tell you, because it was not a big weekend.
Yeah,
night.
It wasn't a headlining.
It wasn't a headlining weekend spot. It was local spot. There was probably 50 people in the club, maybe 60.
I mean, and it was not easy. And we did the best we could. We got some laughs, but it was definitely not. It's like the way you would do it your second time going up in front of strangers and adults at this place. Sent the tape off and never heard anything else. But that initial thing of hey, you guys have something. They said the right things to us that made us think, okay, maybe we should pursue this. This is definitely interesting in a weird way to them.
Yeah. Man, that's so cool. It's amazing how a podcast sometimes makes you learn stuff. I didn't know that. Yeah. I've known you guys for a long time. Yeah. I could have gone my whole life without knowing that.
I know.
So, and then my other sort of aspect of wondering about y'all's start, was there ever a backup plan once you got going?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this was never the initial plan. Right away, this was just something fun that we loved to do. And we didn't even say I wish we could do it. Because we didn't know.
We almost didn't dare to dream because
our dream was to get a clip of our comedy onto Comedy Central.
Okay.
But we didn't even understand what that meant either.
Yeah.
We didn't understand what we know now is that those are all clips of comedians that are working and doing a lot and working at clubs.
What
and people
goes behind?
Yeah,
we didn't know what the shape of a
career
career
if our thing's funny, we should be. We had no clue.
So we thought, okay, maybe someday, who knows? And we went to college. We both got into separate law schools. We're heading to law school. But when we became huge Andy Kindler fans by the time we were in college. Huge. Just loved him. I loved he did one joke. I'll always give him credit for this joke. It was a super silly joke. He's like, Crockpot, there's a dynamite item if you're hungry in 18 hours.
18 hours from now.
I think Mike Sweeney is a big Kindler fan. I've heard him.
Kindler's the best. Kindler, so then Kindler makes this movie.
He's like, yeah, let me get the crackers. And then, which he goes like this, and then he's like, 8 years of mime school, and I still open the cabinet door into my face. The level of jokes that go into that.
For him to create a scenario and then make fun of what he just did, comment on what he just did. No one was doing that. And we were like, our minds were blown. We're like, this guy
this can be comedy. He's not doing a setup and a punchline. He's commenting on the joke he just told in a way that is the way we try and be funny with our friends.
And it was like a tag onto the initial thing. And so
broke the model of what comedy was.
It's like you think the joke is over and then he does a thing and it comes from the, I think what we realized about ourselves in terms of comedy fans, we are super big fans of being surprised.
Yes.
The outcome, the tone.
Yeah, I didn't see that point of view. I didn't see that take on this story. I didn't see that thing coming. And so
we were home for Christmas break in St. Louis and we were looking through the paper, which you did back then.
Yeah.
Guess who's doing a New Year's Eve show at Catch a Rising Star down in Union Station? Andy Kindler. We lost our minds. We got our friends together. We went down there. We saw it.
It was, of course, a terrible show for Andy because
we've done New Year's Eve shows. They're not the worst.
Oh, gotcha.
Unless you just have all your fans.
You're just kind of like, okay, here we go.
Some payday. You're not hanging with your friends on New Year's. It's not a party. It's a work day for you. All of it's bad. And Andy was being Andy, and like half the room walked out, which was crazy. And some lady's yelling at him, and he's like, where's your HBO half-hour special, lady? And we were loving it.
I couldn't breathe. I was laughing so hard. He was being so funny, and his material was so funny. And we, instead of being like, oh, he's having a hard time with the audience, we're like, these idiots don't get how funny he's being right now because he's destroying them.
We're mad at them. And so, like, we go up to him afterwards, and we're like, hey, man, we're at the University of Michigan. We'd love to bring you to school and give you like a few $1,000s to come and perform. And he's like, I'm sure he thought, there's no way I'm getting work off that set that I just did.
Yeah.
So when he came out to Michigan, we said, please watch our stuff. We're going to open for you and just let us know what you think.
Wow,
and he
so smart.
Took him out for pancakes afterwards at this place called, of all places, Silverman's. Yeah, went to Silverman. Now that we're friends with Sarah, it's so funny. But we went to Silverman's. He was like, you guys are really funny. I just think you're going to have to like scrap all your material. Like you got to go to a coast. Either I came up in New York, I live in LA. Those are two great comedy scenes. Just get there. You'll hang out in the scene and you'll start to realize that like you have to write material that is equivalent to what is going on in each of those scenes. And that'll push you to write better stuff.
Yeah.
But it's within you because you guys are funny when we're hanging out. You're just going to have to lose all your material.
Gotcha.
And he's like, you'll probably be on TV in like 3 years if you do that. And we're like, okay, that's enough.
So we like drove home. We called our parents and we said, Andy says we don't have to go to law school.
We're not going to law school.
She's like, who's Andy? Our parents.
Andy Kindler.
All right.
Wait, so one time eating pancakes with somebody and you guys are scrapping law school?
You can tell how badly we wanted to do it. We just give us a reason. Give us a reason to not
He
do
also didn't blow smoke. He was like, your guys' material is not working right now. It's not congruent with how I think you're funny when we hang out. And we had a great time making each other laugh and whatnot. And he was young at the time.
He's probably like 40, 41, 42. Like he'd been doing it for 15 years or so.
Yeah.
He was, a vet, but like he was super honest with us. He was fair. He gave us a compliment while also telling us what was wrong. So we knew that the compliment meant something.
Yeah. And he's someone that we loved. And when he said that, we were like, all right.
It's what we needed to hear.
We said, let's give it a try. We told our parents, like, we'll defer law school for a year.
This is the pushing the chips in moment.
I mean, I'd say, and leaving like 2 chips behind to be like, we won't be totally, because we'll defer our acceptance for a year. That'll sort of allow people to be calm.
Then we went to New York and we're like, this is fun. And by the way, we struggled doing stand-up at the beginning because we didn't rewrite our whole act and brought some of that. We rewrote some of it and brought it
Did you do all your middle school specific jokes? Or
no, almost
college-y stuff.
We dressed similar. It was it was bad.
Yeah. And you're going up at like the Boston Comedy Club in front of Marin.
Ed Helms used to host there. I used to go see Ed host there. And this was kind of Todd Barry era.
Barry, Mark Maron, Jeff Ross. At the time, I remember when he was Jeff Lifschultz.
Yeah.
Pre-Ross.
Oh, wow.
and Louis C.K., Sarah, Sam Cedar, Chappelle.
Oh, that's right.
Attell. So imagine.
And was Brennan doing stand-up at that point? Or did he start?
Kevin Brennan, his brother, was big. Greg Rogel. There were a lot of comics, like New York comics.
So here we are coming from college, kind of dressed alike, doing like almost a twin thing. And it just isn't who we became. And it wasn't what we wanted to do. And we didn't love it in front of these people. So
and that's their first impression of us.
Like sometimes your first impression is like, that's it. You only get one chance to make a first impression, and that's it.
Most of the time, you don't get to correct an erroneous first impression.
Well, the only thing that defeats that is longevity. That's the only thing that can.
And what helped us was alternative comedy started. I know we're all over the map here.
No worries. I'm very interested in, because I tried to do stand-up one time.
You did?
Where?
Yeah, the New York Comedy Club.
Okay.
I think it was what you would refer to as a bringer show.
Sure.
So I brought friends, and since I brought, I guess, the most amount of friends, they put me last, so they would stick around to the end.
That's right. Of course.
Igor was running the room. It felt like a hallway.
Yeah.
The mic worked periodically.
As a sound guy, that's got to kill you.
So you didn't know whether to use the mic or not use the mic.
Right.
Am I using this thing? Am I not using this thing? What am I doing?
Stress around that.
By the way, I was dressed as like a 1978 John McEnroe. Not sure why I thought that was a good idea.
New York.
But
you can't be serious. Cannot be serious.
I was kind of doing like poor man Stephen Wright.
Okay.
It was
that joke was on the line. Chalk dust flew up all over there.
And I just, first of all, it made me respect Stephen Wright a lot because I felt the difference between my stuff and his stuff when I was saying my stuff out loud. And also the fact that he can command an audience's attention with
low energy, with small energy.
I was like, oh, that's something you probably have to develop. But it was a nightmare. And it was also like, it was a weird scene. I mean, I'm basing this off of a tiny sample
size,
Sure. But the green room did not feel communal.
Nope.
And the host was doing really off-putting banter to the point where he did a Golden Showers song to an Asian woman who was probably like in her 50s. Her husband's sitting right next to him. They both look mortified. After that, he introduces the next comic. They get up to leave. And he's like, oh, no, you're not leaving, are you? And they were like, no, look, our umbrella's here. We're not leaving. Our umbrella's here.
And they leave the umbrella.
They sacrifice the umbrella.
The umbrella's like, save yourselves.
And so basically, I didn't pursue stand-up because I was like, this just feels really lonely. So I went the improv route. I went UCB and plus I think I like things coming back at I like responding to stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do wonder because like with like Eating It, Luna Lounge, like that kind of stuff. I did see Todd Barry around UCB and around like McManus and stuff like that. I did over time kind of discover a stand-up community.
Oh, yeah.
But I was not aware of that at that time.
The alt scene blurred the line. So we were in New York and that's amazing. I did not know you had done stand-up.
I have a picture of it, and you should see the look of horror of the front row. I don't have that couple, but there's one guy that's like,
you just have the umbrella.
Yeah.
One lonely umbrella.
I mean, we felt the same way, and we were sort of doing this act that we didn't love in a community that we didn't feel a part of, and naturally, I mean, I wouldn't have liked us if I was doing smart stuff too back then. So we quit. In New York, we quit doing comedy.
Which, considering the fact that we decided not to go to law school to then try this thing, that was a very scary and at the same point confusing moment for us because we're like, now what?
Yeah. Well, New York's intimidating anyway.
It was.
Even if you have a quote-unquote normal job.
We decided to do a sketch writing class at Chicago City Limits, which was this place over on 60th and 1st. Andy Daly was doing stuff over there.
Totally.
But our teacher was this guy, Justin Stengel, and we were like, we really liked him. So Jay and I and our buddy Eric Friedman, who we wrote stuff with, he was our roommate. We went to a trip to Israel with him in high school, and he was a really funny guy. And we just were like...
Before we even took this class, after we had quit comedy, we every night would walk around the city, walk to a new coffee shop, the three of us, sit down, order a plate of fries to split and a drink, each of us like a soda.
So you could legitimately sit at the
there,
booth.
so we would
stay in
write
the booth and we'd write
sketches. Just
Wow.
things that made us laugh and just for no one.
Just for a notebook.
Gotcha.
So we're like, let's take this sketch writing class. I don't know who heard about it. And Justin Stengel was a phenomenal teacher. We loved him.
We kept saying, God, why
Justin,
is
he's such a smart, and it was discouraging in certain ways because we're like,
why is he working?
He's teaching us over here at Chicago City Limits. Like, again, there's like the Seinfeld moment. Like, how are we the only people that know him? So then sometime around, I guess, 96, 7, you have to sort of date this thing. He and his brother got a job writing on Letterman.
And they
became the head writers for like 12 years.
Oh my God.
And we're like, we were right. So
Wow.
it actually, at first, we're like, what is wrong with this business? And we're never going to make it, to, oh my God, we are 100% right. Like, we knew this guy was really talented. Yes. And here he was then writing for this show.
We're calibrated properly.
Right. We had a bunch of cool sketch ideas that kind of reconfigured how we thought about writing comedy because we were so into writing joke.
Or that where we could get comedy from. You can write it from characters and stuff. So we wrote a sketch about like people who just graduated from college and they got internships and they're all meeting for the first time since they got their jobs together at like this bar. And 3 of them are there, and then a 4th one comes, and he's like dressed in like a superhero outfit, and he's
interning at the Hall of Justice.
So it's one guy's an investment banker, one guy's here, and they think it's like the coolest thing. And the turn in the sketch is that it's the worst. It's like the worst
it's
job.
It's just like a bad office.
Bad office.
Great.
Green Lantern's a dick, and this person's not being cool. And I mean, it just was like
he doesn't know how to quit, and it's like all this fun, stupid office stuff that everyone can relate to, but just making about these
the halls of justice.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the Kindler thing earlier. It's like a lot of times the best jokes are the setup is what you think is the joke, and then that just turns out to be an entertaining setup.
Another twist.
Like the secret to doing a good movie is like having entertaining exposition. Like if you can do that, if you can convey information and the people think that's the funny part, and then you're like, nope, that's just the road here. Like
comes the punches. Yeah. We always say that in stand-up. If you can get a laugh on the setup, you're heading down a great road.
That makes sense.
So it opened our minds, and Justin Stengel really opened our...
And he encouraged us. He's like, you guys, I'm telling you, you guys have talent in this area.
Wow.
Don't stop doing this. At that exact moment, we had quit doing stand-up. We had a manager, William McLaughlin, wonderful dude who's no longer in the business, but he was a great guy. And he said, there's a cool scene that's growing right now downtown. When you go down to Surf Reality and watch some shows at Surf Reality.
Collective Unconscious.
Both those places.
Face Boys open mic.
Yeah. Those places were
Reverend Jen.
all over the map. Yeah.
She had the elf ears on, and like they were crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you might see Michael Portnoy, the guy who was Soy Bomb. Remember him at the Grammys?
Remember the guy who danced during
Dylan in this 1997 Grammys? That guy who got like pulled off the stage. We'd be sitting in this comedy show where you see a stand-up, Jordan Rubin, maybe Zach Galifianakis.
Oh, yeah,
maybe Brody Stevens. Like you'd see some comics you liked, and then this guy comes up, pulls down his pants, sticks a carrot up his ass, and starts singing "Go Down Moses."
And you're like, that's what he's doing with his 6 minutes of time?
You get 6 minutes of time to do whatever you want. They start a timer and you do whatever you want.
Okay, you're here. You got this amount of time. Go up on stage.
Go. So what's interesting about that, and I love the freedom within that.
Yeah.
So at that same time, we had gone to see a show called Eating It.
Yeah.
Which was at Rebar first and then moved to Luna Lounge. But at Rebar, it was like a U-shaped couch. And remember, we were coming up in the early 90s, late 80s, where like if a fat guy got on stage, he's going to talk about how you cut his leg open and gravy's going to spill out. He's going to do all the jokes you expect him to do.
Yes.
We go to this show, and it's Kindler being hilarious. Kindler, I think he invited us down to the show.
He invited us to go to the show.
Again, Kindler pointing us in the right direction. Thank you, Andy.
Liz Winstead, co-creator of The Daily Show, who was,
by the way, your interview with Madeline Smithberg was incredible. I loved it. Fantastic.
She was a tremendous writer and great comic. She told like a story about, I want to say that when she got an abortion or a story about an abortion or something, and that moved her to tears. Louis C.K. was hilarious, telling jokes. Jeff Ross did like poems and stuff, and all this stuff. And Mark Cohen hosted it. The great Mark Cohen, who played Sarah Silverman's dad in the Sarah Silverman show.
Yeah.
Great guy. So funny.
John Benjamin and Sam Cedar were running for president of Rebar. So they had like campaign speeches and knocking each other, and then people came out of the crowd and argued with them, and it was like
our mind was blown sideways.
You're like, this is comedy.
We thought comedy was this.
That was UCB for me. Yeah. As I was like, now I just got to figure out how to do this. But I've definitely found my people here,
Totally. Same. And for us, all of a sudden, ideas started coming out about performing.
Yeah.
We were like, oh, what if we did a thing? And I remember this is our first thing we did at Surf Reality. What if we did a thing where we did a fake improv game where Randy, Eric, and the three of us performed together, almost like a little troupe.
Well, it's just you and me on stage. Randy's going to go outside. Let's do an improv game. He's going to go outside, and you could see the person at the door from the security camera, like people in the crowd could see it. So I'm going to go wait downstairs, and I'm just going to be standing down there.
And I'll take a suggestion of a person to be, and I'll come back up, and we'll see if Randy can guess who I am. And I'm like, before I take suggestions, I do want to say this because Randy may not be great at this tonight.
And I didn't want to say it in front of him, but just cut him some slack. He's going through like a rough breakup with his girlfriend, and if his performance is off for whatever reason, and I just please, as his brother,
I'm not saying to laugh, but if you guys feel,
cut him some slack.
So, okay, I'll take suggestions of anyone I can be, history, anytime. And our friend Eric stands up.
Like Susan, his ex-girlfriend.
I'm like, bro, that's so odd. Like, why?
Is this improv or not?
He's like, you take the first suggestion. If you take a second suggestion, I was first, then you're not doing improv. So it became like an argument like that. And I'm like, all right, fine.
Bring it back up. So I come back up, and we start to get into this scene of like, I'm trying to figure out who this person is as we work through a scene.
And I'm like, it's so funny. You can't figure it out because you can't figure out anything because you're this. And I'm like playing a fight, like a relationship fight, so real and so intense.
I'm trying to figure out who it is, and then he hits like someone on the court, and I'm like, God damn it, I hate you, Susan. I hate you, Susan.
Crowd laughs.
Broken shell.
Great. And it was a crazy bit that was the opposite of what we were doing in stand-up. It was there were laughs coming in places that we never expected. The crowd was in on it. You thought you were in this tiny hallway, and all of a sudden the walls moved out, and the ceiling.
There's like a couple like happy accidents basically sprinkled in there as far as like, we can keep doing that, or
and that gave way to more creative stand-up bits. So like, I remember we had a mouse in our apartment, and that was like freaking us out. We're like, I cannot wait. Like, you open the door, and it was a 1-bedroom apartment. We built a wall. There were 3 of us.
It's a hard thing to ignore. Yeah,
in a New York
apartment is a mouse. So we had a mouse, and we're like,
it's the worst. Has anyone had a mouse in their apartment? And everyone was like, yes.
And we're like, mouse. It's like living with the worst roommate ever.
Yeah.
And then we go into, this is what start to develop our style, like 10 minutes on what a dick this guy is.
So it's like us sharing stories about a bad roommate.
Yeah.
He eats all the chips, leaves just a few left. Doesn't put a chip clip on it. Leaves one chip. Leaves one chip.
Who leaves one chip in the bag?
And I go, and I'm so hungry, and I want nothing.
Thanks a lot,
mouse.
That's
you
awesome.
dick. And then he's always talking about this time he spent down in Atlanta. No one cares.
If you went somewhere, he went there twice.
Right.
This fucking
He's always
guy.
got a one-up. And it did really well. And it was this really interesting thing that we were starting to like understand. So it opened us up to all this new stuff.
Yeah.
We got a chance to jump on to the Luna Lounge show,
which was the big day.
I'm eating it.
I hate the fact I had a chance to see Jane's Addiction once in London, Brixton Academy with the Wonder Stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't go because it was like my parents' anniversary dinner the same night. That and never having gone to see Eating It at Luna Lounge are like my 2 biggest
it was
like,
pretty
ones
special.
that got away because I'm so fascinated by that scene.
I just remember going in the room, and it was just like people were sitting on couches looking forward.
It wasn't even the greatest room. Like there's a loud air conditioning in there, and the stage was really high, but like the energy in that room, it was packed to the back, and then there'd be people standing outside looking through a window, so much so that they developed a speaker system that could go into the bar so that people, if you weren't in the room, could hear it. That's how electric the energy was in there.
And did Marin run the room, or who?
No.
What was it?
The room was run by Michael O'Brien, who was a publicist.
Not the
no
SNL
relation
guy.
Who was the other?
Dave Becky probably ran it.
Okay.
Publicist, and then one other person.
And they really just filled out the downtown scene, and it was such an honor to be on that stage. I mean, I remember when UCB arrived in New York, they performed on that stage.
I think the State guys did stuff there too, right?
And then the State developed their own show called Stella.
Yeah.
In the Time Cafe in the Fez room,
which is downstairs the Time Cafe, and the subway would run next to the room. So like in the middle of the show, the entire room would start rumbling.
That's awesome.
But they had a super cool show.
And we loved their fans because they had all of their friends from NYU and all these people that they knew who then became like super famous. So Andy said to us, in 3 years, if you do what I'm telling you, this is in college, you'll be on TV. And that's all we needed to hear.
Yeah.
And so the crazy thing was we started to develop, because we were performing at Surf Reality, And Robert Pritchard, who ran that place, he was in an apartment above like where it was over on Allen between Stanton and Rivington. He was like, okay, this summer, by the way, if you guys want the Friday at like 8 p.m. time slot this summer, you can have it for like 6 weeks, he said to us. And we're like, oh my God, what do we even do with that? Like, first of all, summertime, everybody's gone, so the industry will be gone. What are we going to do? And we sat down with our buddy Eric Friedman and we wrote a sitcom for the stage.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then we just did a new episode each week. We had a show open that we shot, and we had commercials, and we had
Mike Royce doing
crowd work and warm up.
This almost sounds like Channel 101-ish in spirit or whatever.
Totally.
Like,
we had like Sloven and Allen doing commercials in between.
Yeah.
And then the cast was filled with like Mike Blyden and Matt Price and all these really great improvisers and people we knew. The show was called Double Agents, where Randy and I just played agents of bad talent, talent agents. So you thought, I mean, it was such a silly...
Former performers who now are agents.
Former child stars who played one
roster
character.
Sucked.
It was almost like Bad Entourage. I don't know. And we didn't know how to write a sitcom. We didn't know how to write anything. We're just like, let's write a funny play each week and let's put it on with our people. We learned it. And the show actually did pretty well. It was super fun.
Really
I loved it. We had a great time doing it.
Off of that show, we wound up getting offered Apartment 2F, which was a show on MTV, which was initially offered to John Benjamin and Sam Cedar. And they were at the point where they were like getting pilots and other things. And
was like, Dr. Katz already?
Dr. Katz was starting.
Yeah. And I think John Benjamin was like, no, I'm not going to do something for MTV. Like they had been through the ringer with MTV and they're like, screw that. We're not doing it. And then it came to us because they had seen us do this thing. And so they were looking for 2 people and they wanted chemistry, and we did this pilot, and then it ultimately got picked up and we did like a whole season of shows, which was its own wonderful, beautiful thing. But Andy was right. We were on TV by the time we were 25. It's crazy.
He was totally right. And when we did that show, we couldn't believe our opportunity. We couldn't believe we got to quit our jobs and then just do this for a job. We got to cast people, and Stephen Colbert was in an episode.
Galifianakis was a cast member. Michael Showalter was a cast member.
Wow.
I mean,
that's so nuts.
Here's the stand-up. So it was a sitcom with stand-ups, sketch, and short films in it.
Woven into the plot lines. Of
So the pilot, I think, was...
Okay, so they're not just disparate things.
No, they're part of the storyline.
I gotcha. Oh, wow.
The pilot, I think now in retrospect, was a better idea than what the show became. They developed in the wrong direction, and we didn't know how to say no.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't our idea.
Understandable. But
yeah. So they're like, we want to do a variety show in an apartment. We're like, that's a great idea. That's really funny.
Yeah.
And so we did this crazy variety show in the apartment with like loose, like runners, not even storylines. But then after they did that, I guess they did some market research or whatever. And they're like, the research came back from focus groups and like, we want to know more about their lives. So their attitude was, let's turn it into a sitcom, which I think in some ways was not the right call because it was more revolutionary and weird when it was just a variety show.
Yeah, the pilot was us and Zach, and JB Smoove did stand up. He did stand up on
in the pilot,
Jesus.
Behind the couch.
Yeah, we're like, you want to do stand up? And
that guy, I loved
his stand up.
That guy is a premise machine.
He was amazing, and his premises were so funny, and he was himself. He was hysterical.
Like we did, like our sensibility was he's doing stand up in front of us on the couch, and he's killing. You cut away to us, and we're both laughing. Then you cut away to us, and we both have 40s, and we're drinking them. Then you cut back to us, and there's 2 old ladies hanging out with us. Every time you do an audience cutaway to us, it's like a different scenario. We're like, that's making fun of how stand-up is shot on TV.
Yeah.
Like that for us felt like it was a cool choice. And like,
but then it became this thing. But the stand-ups who were on the actual show when it aired were Patrice O'Neill,
R.I.P.,
Patton Oswalt,
R.I.P. He's not dead. I just want him to get a good night's sleep. I know what it's like to be a
Jim
parent.
Norton,
Bill Burr.
Oh my God.
These are the stand-ups who did stand-up on our show. Jordan Rubin, Brian Fraser, and Arj Barker. I mean, it was insane.
This reminds me of Held Up.
Yeah.
So this was, I guess, 2009. This is in LA.
Yes.
Right? I'd met you guys in Echo Park.
Yeah.
Because you used to go to the coffee shop.
To the
across,
Fix.
Yeah, across the street.
From your place.
From where I lived.
Yeah.
And then Inman Young
Inman
was the producer of Held Up. And I knew Inman from Atlanta.
That's great.
He was looking for an editor. And luckily, I'd known you guys.
Mm-hmm. We said, let's do it.
Yeah, he said it was like a 5-minute conversation or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I'll always cherish that working with you guys, but
Amazing.
It was a Crackle show. You guys played like Batman and Robin, basically.
2 bank robbers.
So basically, it was a pilot on Comedy Central that we got cast in, and they weren't looking for brothers. They were literally auditioning 2 other people, like Tim Bagley and Andy Dick, or what I mean? Like it was, and it was the best of the best of the best people going in for this, and we're like, we have no shot, but we came in and we got it. So we get on the set, and like it's the people they hired to do it were very much actors and not comedy people. And Jett Chandrasekhar was the director
from Broken Lizard,
and from like Super Troopers. He directed Super Troopers and Beer Fest and all that stuff. He's a great director and has gone on to direct like Arrested Development and a number of other things. But we were improvising with him, and it was like the most fun. He was just like, keep going, keep doing your stuff. And it like really, and Gene Hong, who wrote it, who's a phenomenal writer, Gene was like, I love what you're doing. I love it so much. And the pilot was kind of like this, like people go to rob a bank, and right as they're about to leave, another 2 people go to rob the same bank on the same day and screw it up, and that's us.
And then the cops come, and they're held up in this bank because the timing is off.
Yeah.
2 bumbling idiots ruined the timing of actually crack crew, and it's all the people in the bank. And that was their take on the thing. And it's kind of a cool idea for a show. Everything takes place in this bank. We love the idea. We were so lucky to be cast in it. It didn't go. It ultimately didn't go. I think part of the reason why it didn't go was that the cast wasn't hilarious. Like it was a lot of decent actors, but they just didn't know how to make the material funny.
Like George Clooney's ex-girlfriend, Krista Allen, who is a lovely woman, was one of the, I'm like, really? You want her to do a comedy thing in here? Like, we couldn't believe it. And again, she's super nice, and we loved being around her. Like, I can't say enough nice things about her, except for the fact that I don't think she was right for this thing. I thought that was a waste of a comedic role. You should have gotten anybody else
who's in the comedy community.
Who's in the comedy
Carrie
community.
Kenny.
Oh
like,
my God.
Why would you go for someone who would like just...
Amy Sedaris, like, not that she would do it, but I don't know. I mean, maybe she would have done it in that moment.
Yeah. Like, they almost cast it like a network show, but it was on Comedy Central. And so you really needed, like, if you're going on Comedy Central, it should feel like Workaholics. It should feel like the cast in general should be filled with, like, electrically funny people.
Yeah.
It didn't make it, but then they gave us the opportunity later.
So, Gene, they said, do you want to write this as, like, a web series? Like, break it down and write it as a web series for Crackle. And Gene was doing like 3 other things. And he said, I can't do it. Would you guys want to write this to us?
Oh, okay.
And we were like, yes, absolutely.
Of course.
Let's do it. And so we wrote it all up. We asked everyone we knew to be in it. We said John Doerr should be the teller. We had just done It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, so we had a really good relationship with Caitlin Olsen. And Caitlin was incredible.
Yes.
She played. She was pregnant when she did it, which was crazy.
That's
She was
right.
like 4 months pregnant when she did she was like beautiful and funny and amazing, and like
that's who you needed in the other.
Right.
Like,
and she could do, like, if you did 3 takes, she could do it funny 3 different ways.
3 different ways, and always finding it was really good. Susie Nakamura, who's like just beyond brilliant. She played the branch manager. We got Harmar Superstar, buddy. He played Phil, her boyfriend. We
Steve
had
Agee played a homeless guy who was constantly masturbating.
Eddie Pepitone played a hostage negotiator who's in an ex-relationship with Jessica Chaffin, who was like one of the women in there. Tig Notaro
played the only guy who could understand what the homeless man was saying, and she was like his translator.
And she could not stop breaking.
Oh my God.
She was every time Agee said anything.
She was on her like interpreting what he was saying
was so funny.
Mick Kroll played like the dick.
Wasn't his character named douchebag?
I think so. He just came in the middle of a hold-up standoff that had been going on the entire time. He walks in, pulls money out of an ATM while on a phone call.
Yeah, like a Bluetooth.
Yeah. And then leaves.
Yeah, Maria Bamford
like news person, Chris Cox,
Cyrus Farmer from The Wire, Sam Levine from Freaks and Geeks.
From Freaks and Geeks.
I mean, Inman Young producing it. Inman is currently the head of production at A24.
It's amazing.
It was just an insane collection. I mean, for me, because I knew the improv world, so I knew, especially like UCB early 2000s, I knew that world really well.
Yeah.
I didn't really know stand-ups. And also, you guys, those were so many talented people right on the on-ramp.
That's right.
John, like you guys were early John Doerr proponents, and I was like, oh my god,
he's amazing.
This guy's fucking unbelievable,
Unreal.
Incredible.
I actually knew Kroll from New York, but my two of my favorite moments, because Kroll's in the script. I don't think everybody calls him douchebag out loud, but in the script, it's douchebag.
Right.
And so at one point, they're trying to cue him. So like the AD is yelling, douchebag. Douchebag. And one of the producers, Joe McLear, for some reason thought that they were calling for him.
Yeah.
And so he ran out of the door and busted the take as Nick Kroll was coming. And they were like, what are you doing?
And why are you answering to that?
Douchebag?
Hilarious.
That's a deeper issue that we need to work out.
Like, what the fuck are you doing?
It's hilarious.
And then also, Eddie Pepitone, that was the one guy that everybody just stopped whatever they were doing, because he and Chaffin,
they were amazing.
They were like
an
a
ex-husband, a divorced couple.
So he comes in as a hostage negotiator.
Yeah. That's right.
Trying to be calm.
I'm here to help you out.
What, Sharon? What Jesus the fuck are you doing here?
Oh, it's nice to see you. And like they get
limp
into it.
Dick or whatever.
Yeah, you're a whore. Like just him yelling at her and her yelling back at him and losing all the professionalism of what we needed in the moment.
What we needed was role playing to get the hostage out, but then Jay and I have to get the two of them to role play to work out their issues in the relationship. And I'm like, it goes back to the mouse bit.
Yeah.
Where we're like, the mouse is the worst roommate in our house. It's like absurd, but this is the absurd world that we're living in a holdup.
It was so much fun.
So much fun.
And we got to sit in your house where your edit bay was. And get to know your wife, because we came over a bunch and hang at your house while you worked your magic on this thing and turned what we did into an even better project.
Well, I got to say, I learned a lot about editing because of Held Up, because you guys had a very specific pace in mind, and also a very specific way that you wanted to use music.
Right.
So I would do a first cut of something, and then you'd be like, "All right, cool, cut that. You have music here? Okay, stop that music here, and then have this, and stop that." And at first, I was like, "What the fuck are these guys doing?" And also, you guys are behind me because it's an edit-based situation.
I know.
And I can tell your voices apart now, but at the time, it was just a bunch of Sklar coming.
Jesus,
sorry. I'm so sorry.
There was a moment where I was kind of like resistant, and then there was a moment where I was just kind of like, okay, I think I just need to trust these guys. Like, I'm just going to do what they say. And then I got it, and then I could do it.
Then you started to do it on your own, and you were making choices that we didn't even expect, and we're like, "Oh, that's amazing."
But I had to give myself over to that, because at first I was like, "What the fuck?"
I know we gripped tightly.
There was like, once I saw the fruits of it. I mean, because it was all funny people. Like, there was no problem with like a lack of like funny material, but there were definitely things where you were like, "Okay, no, we're actually going to build a moment here where it was like a constructed joke." Like, that wasn't there in the footage.
Right.
You know? And then after I saw how you guys were doing that, I was like, oh, I can apply that to this. I definitely have fond memories of that. And also Amber, my wife, she was working from home too, but she was
design.
Yeah, she was making clothes in the other room.
Yep.
And so every once in a while, when we would get kind of like, couldn't see the forest through the trees or whatever, or had been working on a scene for so many times I couldn't tell if it was funny or not, we'd be like, Amber.
Come on in. Amber Vision.
Yeah, Amber Vision.
We called it Amber Vision whenever she was.
What do you think?
And it was funny because later she told, like, after we'd finished the show, she was like, I got to tell you something. I could hear you guys from like across the fucking apartment.
Yeah.
Like I'd already heard all those
jokes.
So she was just as worn out by it by the time. But she had to come in and be like, "Oh my god, that's great!"
She put on a brave face.
Her.
It was wonderful, and the experience. I mean, thank you for letting us kind of be in there and be as like where we were on it. But then, like, there was a certain point in time, like we said, where we kind of backed away, and it was what it was. And then they put it together, on for HBO Canada. And
I cut that.
That's the movie.
You cut the movie.
I mean,
of it.
The actors, the director, the editor, everything was just top notch.
The sensibility was definitely like Luna Lounge sensibility.
Totally.
Like AG, I'm very fascinated by. Amazing photographer.
Incredible.
He seems like a really cool guy.
Artist.
And Doerr, this brings up my next kind of thing I want to talk about with you guys, because I felt so lucky to know about John Doerr. And when we saw the screening of the feature version of it, I had gotten the job at Conan but hadn't started yet.
Right.
And his first question to me was, "Do you know JP?" talking about JP Buck.
Right.
And I was like, not yet.
Yeah.
But I will.
I
will, and it was great to be able to like go, hey JP, like nice to meet you.
I've heard about you.
Yeah, John Doerr speaks very highly of you. And JP obviously huge John Doerr. But like John Doerr was the first stand-up on Conan.
Amazing.
Like that entire TBS run.
I mean, I would argue that the John Doerr, Rory Scovel being booked on the same show doing stand-up at the same time bit is maybe one of the best stand-up bits ever done on late night television.
I agree.
Ever.
I agree.
Because it was an original bit filled with real jokes. It was a conceit.
They delivered it at the same time. I don't know how the fuck they did it.
I don't know how they did it. And it
just
was
listening. They listened.
And it got funnier as it went. It was a brilliant concept. Because, you sometimes hear like, oh, these guys did this one time and it was a brilliant concept. And you're like, yeah. And then it was 4 minutes of that same
funny
thing.
for 30 seconds. And then you're just kind of like running out the clock
this
for the
was
rest
funny.
of it. Yeah, all the way through.
Because you kept hearing little tidbits of the jokes they were doing, which were funny.
Yeah.
And it was so good. I loved it so much. And I'm like, that's John Doerr in a nutshell. And how lucky were we to have him on our thing?
Oh
and
my
now
God.
it starts to be like, you understand how the webs spider out.
And that was my introduction to Rory Scovel. And I'm from the South. Rory's from the South. He's actually from Greenville, which is where my dad's from.
Yeah.
No way.
And I was like, wow, this guy is
He's amazing.
super fucking funny.
Amazing.
And then I ended up engineering pen pals with him and Daniel Van Kirk for a while.
Phenomenal.
At Team Coco.
Yeah.
And Daniel Van Kirk is y'all's
co-host on Dumb People Town.
Yeah.
And just a very big collaborator of funny things in our life and like a comedy brother of ours too. I mean
Dan was an intern at UCB around 2011 or 12, and he spoke to Earwolf at the time, which is where our podcast was.
Yeah.
And he said, I want to work on shows here. What can I do? And they said, well, we'll see if anyone wants anyone. And we were doing a sports show that had just moved to 2 shows a week. And we said, okay, we could use help researching.
Digging up stories. And if you want to break them down, like it's as much or as little as you want to be a part of this thing.
Gotcha.
And he's like, I'm finding a lot of stories that have nothing to do with sports, but they're just crazy.
You're just kind of filing them away or
yeah,
whatever.
And he's like, what should we do with them? And we all kind of sat down and together we were like, well, maybe.
Around that time, we came in one time and he was with one of the other sound guys when we showed up to record. And both of them were listening to this hilarious Mark Wahlberg voicemail. And we're like, is that Wahlberg? That's crazy. And it's so funny. We're laughing. We're like, it's amazing. And Cyrus, the sound guy at the time, was like, no, that's him.
Oh.
He did that. And we were like, wait.
What?
He can do a good Boston. I heard him do a Boston.
We couldn't believe it. We're like, this is so funny. We were like, would you do that on our show? Because we did have like Chris Cox doing voice stuff.
That was another held up guy.
Incredible. Yeah, he was amazing as the cop. We're like, Dan, we said, would you do this? And he's like, nah, I don't want like 50, 75,000 people listening to my stuff. He's like, absolutely, I would do it. So he starts doing some voices and then like he's still looking for stories. And we're like,
maybe the second show we do every week should be non-sports related. And would you want to co-host that with us since you're finding these stories? And
yeah, you bring the stories up. We won't even know what they are. And we'll get another guest and like we'll just go through these stories. And that's how Dumb People Town was born.
That's
we originally was Scarborough County.
That's right.
But then we switched it to Dumb People Town when we moved over to Feral Audio, which became Starburns, and we were like, this is the new direction of this thing. And now we're over at All Things Comedy.
Gotcha.
Which is where we are now, and I
We've
love
been
it.
friends with Madrigal for years. And
Madrigal is funny as shit.
Brilliant and a great
And
businessman.
Bill Burr.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
those two
Burr,
guys are
Your old castmate.
Our relationship with him goes back so far.
so far. Daniel Van Kirk, this relationship between Randy and I, we've worked so hard through
Randy
the years
and me.
Sorry, between Randy and me.
Sorry, didn't want to.
Well, it's weird because I kind of sounds more official, but it's really
It's wrong.
me. Yeah, it's
It
like
should be me.
yeah.
So
between you and me.
The relationship between us is
Good work
one that
around.
is hard to
Actually,
penetrate.
between we. I'm sorry. I didn't.
It's hard to penetrate. And the fact that Dan has been able to tap in with a totally different type of energy, but still work with the two of us and the three of us work
It's
together.
really fun.
Yeah.
We always love having another person to bounce off of. And so
I will bring it back to something very core, and this is just a quick story. We were hiking in Italy with our friend who's an author, and he said that he had sort of connected with Simon Sinek, the guy who did the TED Talk about
just what your why is, figuring out what your why is. Most people just go about doing their job, and then much later they say, why am I doing that? Why would I do
it's like
all
Microsoft sort of figured out like the what, the how and the what. We build computers.
We build the best computers, and we're going to do that.
Apple did it the other way.
They figured out the Y
first.
We want to create the coolest piece of technology ever so that
Do you want to be a part of something where every time something new comes out, you're a part of something?
You have to keep getting the new iPhone.
And he's like, that's how you have to think. And so he wanted to write a book, and he was connecting with our buddy, Brad Meltzer, who Brad had written books and said, I'll help you come up with like a book thing. And he said, I'll figure out what your why is. We spend a day together, I can figure it out.
Wow.
And so Meltzer met with him, and
he asked him all these questions like, what's your childhood like? Tell me about this. Tell me what books, media, TV shows, movies, what'd you gravitate towards?
And then he's like, what are your books about? And he started telling him the stories of his books. And he comes back and he goes, okay, I figured out your why. It's like in half a day.
Like, okay.
Meltzer's like,
okay, let's see what this
guy.
Yeah, okay.
Tell me what my why is. And he says, you believe that regular people can save the world.
Brad was like, holy shit. He's like, that is it.
That's exactly what I believe.
To the T.
Had he not articulated that to
not
himself?
articulated it, but it was there.
Wow.
It was in everything he did.
So
nailed it.
I'm having this conversation with him as we're walking in Italy around the Alps.
We did the Mont Blanc Trail, which is like...
It starts in Geneva, kind of outside of Geneva.
You go to Switzerland through France and then Italy, and you're kind of going back and through.
So we're hiking down along this river for like 6 hours, and he's telling me the story, and I'm like...
What a great place to hear this, by the way.
It's amazing. All you have is time.
But you also have the space away from your busy life, and your brain is kind of in a different mode. And so as he finished the story, I'm like thinking about like, what is our why? What is the thing that is at the core of who we are?
You should think about this too, because I bet you can. Like,
because it's there. It's there whether you know it or not.
Too.
Yeah.
It's in there. So as I'm starting to think about it, I realized what I think it is, and I grab Randy, and I'm like, this whole conversation, and I was like, I think this is our why. I think we believe at our core that we are better together than we are on our own. That is the core principle of our lives.
It may be the unspoken reason why we did stand up that very first time together as opposed to singularly.
Yeah.
Because we have that idea that like it's better.
It's why we put that whole collection of people together for Held Up. We didn't put ourselves in the lead.
2F. Yeah.
Why cheap seats? We grabbed every human being we could grab. They wanted us to do the show in Bristol, Connecticut or in DC, and we said, no, it's got to be in New York because
that's where the comedy scene is. It's why we do this show, Tag It, as a stand-up show.
That's what I was going to say. Like the last time I saw you guys here together was when JP Buck was producing a podcast with Laura Bites.
Amazing podcast.
Really funny.
Yep.
Called Unsound Advice. And
deep.
Yeah. I mean, she's really smart and really funny and very much committed to the community of stand-up. And before, and she kept on saying like, I gotta have the Sklars on. We needed the Sklars on because you guys are big believers in supporting and being like a part of like an ecosystem.
We're better together.
And I love Tag It.
So Tag It, for those who don't know, it's like a tag is a little joke that people pitch on top of a joke. That's
on the end of the joke.
At the end of a joke. Oh, here's a good thing, but here's a tag on top of it.
So the punchline's already happened, and then the tag
You could argue that the tag in the earlier thing of Andy Kindler was the mime joke. So that was a tag onto the end of the
tag. Like, and then the other tag on top of that is 8 years of mime lessons, and I still open the cabinet into my face.
Yeah.
Tag. So
in improv, that might be referred to as heightening. Where it's kind of like, don't be afraid to take it a step further. And shows like South Park, where it's like you think you're at the top, but it's like nope.
Keep going. That's what makes those shows. That's what makes those shows so. I wait to see how they're going to heighten it.
Yeah.
And tag their jokes and stuff. And so our friends do their sets of comedy, and Jay and I are off to the side listening as we're writing tags.
So are they doing a set that's tailored for Tag It, or are they they're doing their set? The set they would have done anyway.
The only requirement we say is we advise them to do material that you have not filmed yet.
Okay.
Because if you like any of these tags, take them.
Yeah. That's the whole point. So that they are doing material that I say, do your current set. Because you might think this bit is done, but we're listening and we'll pitch on it. I guarantee you we'll pitch you jokes.
Yeah.
So we're listening and we're writing tags. And then afterwards, we pitch them our tags in front of the audience. It is like high wire. These are straight jokes. This is what happens in a writer's room where you just flat out pitch your joke. And if it doesn't go, it just falls off a cliff. But if it does go, it's like
electric.
Wow.
Electric. And
we had Kumail on the show, and he was talking about this like weird porn where they're like, the woman gave so much explanation.
It was like stepmom porn, but she gave like a lot of explanation about the
kid.
And we were like, that is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And Jay and I, without talking to each other, because we're just typing it on the notes section of our phone, we both wrote the most specific story about the woman having to adopt this kid. And she's like, but there was so much red tape.
Like I filled out one form
I
wrong
missed one check mark, and then now suddenly I'm going back and I'm redoing all the forms, and you take off your pants. I mean, it was like
everything was like a long thing of like, and then this agency saying yes, but then this agency's not communicating with this agency, and take off
how hard
your
it is, and take off your pants. I mean, it's just like, we're like, if you told us, Camille, that you guys have to write 15 pages of this conversation between the two of them before she says take your pants off, we'll do it. We'll do it right now. Forever. I would do that for no money. I would do that right now. And now, because we've done the show so much, done it at Largo and done it with like...
And you'll do it at the Comedy Store too,
Comedy Store in Largo. So Sandler and Spade and Sarah and Pete Holmes and Fortune Feimster and...
Dude, Fortune Feimster, holy shit.
Mo Welch and Dulce Sloan and Zainab Johnson and all these like incredible comedians, Adam Ray and like all these incredible comedians.
Nikki Glazer.
Yeah.
Our tags now, not that we care, we don't. We actually are very happy to give this up.
But you've seen them out in the wild. That's so cool.
Brad Williams. I mean, the best is Brad Williams. We did it. He came up and did Tag It in the Comedy Store up in the belly room. And then we're hanging out after the show and then walking out to get our cars through the parking lot. Which
he's in the original room, and we hear our tag and gets a laugh.
And it gets a laugh.
We're like, see you bitches later. We did it.
What great instant gratification.
But it goes back to we are better together than we are on our own. People think comedians are just lone wolves out there doing what they do by themselves. Yeah. Is it wolf or wolves? Wolves is a group of Jewish people. The wolves are coming over. Put on your nice wolves. Lone wolves. People out there. It's hard to be a lone wolf.
Multiple lone wolves.
Right. So in green rooms everywhere, you talked about your experience in the green room at New York Comedy Club not being a welcoming one.
So I think we felt that too early on, and we're like, what if we not only, and this is a grandiose idea, and look, but we've been in comedy for 30 years, 30 plus years. What if we not only just were in stand-up comedy, but what if we helped shape the culture of at least some part of stand-up comedy so that it's a giving culture where we, by example, show that through this show that people should share ideas with each other and help each other. And then what if we're not there one night and someone benefited from our tag but watches somebody else is like, hey, have you ever thought of that? What if we just sort of, without being overt about it, a hope that a chain reaction of people giving to each other within the community and creating more of a community in this world? What if we leave the community better than when we arrived?
Yeah.
When we go out?
Because comedy is many things, as you know. It is the writing of jokes, the telling of jokes in front of people.
It's the connecting with an audience.
The writer's room, that kind of version of comedy.
There's the sketch group or improv group that does it with each other, but still in front of an audience. But the truth is, there's the hanging out with other funny people that is 50% of the time that the audience doesn't see.
Yeah.
That is, to me, equally as special. And if you walk into a room and there's love, last night, Bert Kreischer was in the room. He just did a guest set, and Steph Tolev and Adam Ray.
She's a force of nature.
She's amazing.
Man. Holy shit.
Steph and Bert and Adam Ray and me and Jason, and we are just literally having the best time backstage at the Comedy Store in the main room. And I'm like, this was half the reason I pulled myself off my couch to do this tonight. The other half was being out there to take our ideas and unwrap them in front of an audience. But this is it too.
Yeah.
And so again, we realize and recognize that like you better damn well love this thing.
Yeah.
Called comedy.
Was Dan Donahue was a guest on the Largo show, and basically the way he explained it, he was like, "Look, the shitty part about stand-up, I actually like that." he's like, I don't know if I hypnotize myself or what, but he's like, I love it so much that I don't mind driving 2 hours for a gig that barely pay. You know, I mean, like for anything to transcend a hobby, kind of have to either tolerate or at least be at peace with the bullshit aspect of it or the hard aspect.
There's a lot of bullshit. It's a really hard job. It's hard to get work. It's hard to be successful. It's hard to keep it going, maintain. It's hard to write new material. All that stuff is very difficult.
There's all the Sisyphusian stuff.
It is. It's like a podcast.
Yeah.
Or it feels like you're climbing a mountain and then you get to the top of this mountain and you realize, oh, I climbed the wrong mountain. It's over there. Over there is where
and
I was
got to go down to get even back be up. At the bottom of that fucking.
And you're watching people ride gondolas to the top of the other mountain, and you're like, wait, we did the wrong thing.
But I do believe that, like, you give a tag to someone and then they do it and they text you and they're like, oh, by the way, that was great. It's come back to us too. We were doing a show out in the Valley one time, Hunter Hill, who's a fantastic comedian, his show that he was doing out in the Valley. And Ian Edwards, great comic, great writer.
Love him. He was there last night.
He was there last night, hanging out the very
end. Impressive guy.
Great love him, and just a hilarious comic and a great person. He watches our set there, and then Jay and I hop in our cars to go drive over to the Comedy Store because we have a set there that night too. We're driving, and all of a sudden, Ian texts me. I get a text from me and it says, hey, flip-flop these two things in what you're saying and call it this. Use this wording.
Wow.
I was like, okay, let's try it. See what it is. Now it is like one of the biggest laughs in our whole set.
Wow.
Every single time I think of him, every time we say it, and I was like, what a nice thing. We didn't even ask him to tag it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just makes me, it sounds corny, but it just makes me happy.
No, I mean, I totally get it. And I do think that there's a sliding doors version of my life where I find the welcoming green room and commit to developing a persona and all that. But improv just appealed to me so much just because, it's kind of like when you're talking about like Andy Kindler, like the gap between like hanging out at a diner, being yourself funny and improvising in a scene funny is not as big of a chasm to cross than it is doing what you do. And in improv, which is why I found the tag it thing so interesting, is like, I mean, there's different schools of like what people emphasize improv wise. Like UCB is very much about the game, and there's all these like kind of Del Close-isms that
don't think, be in the moment, do not prepare anything. Yes.
Yeah, there's all these like things that sort of are meant to keep you everybody kind of heading towards the same goal and scenes, but they also like double as life rules. And I don't know if there's that necessarily in stand-up. Like stand-up is kind of like
stand-up. The life rule is A, believe in yourself. B, be in the moment so that like you can actually react to things the way they are. And C, when things go sideways, don't panic.
Yeah.
Do not panic. It's okay.
Yeah.
Last night we were doing this show and the audience was just they were smaller and they were a little more quiet.
Smaller as people?
Smaller. They were very tiny people. Emotionally. And we did our set and we're like, God, that material's like done a lot better in other circumstances more recently. And I wonder what's going on. And we start to talk about it. And then we're on stage and we were like both very calm. And you're like, all right, we got this. We got this. It's like, whatever. I mean, I like what we're saying and I like what we're doing. And I think what we're doing is complicated and interesting. And I do sense that they're getting it too.
Yeah.
But that's what it teaches us in life is that it's okay. Just breathe and it's going to be fine.
And it teaches you to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
Like that part of life, as we have our own children and as we're raising people, we're like, we're not raising them to be comedians because I think that's too hard of a life. Even though Randy's daughter is very funny.
And it's
doing
hard
improv.
To discourage doing improv in Michigan. She's in John Glazer, like the same group that John Glazer was in.
Oh, that's awesome.
She's very funny. But I think what can we pull from our lives and what we do? And that is take the risk.
Yeah.
Stand-up is you come up with a premise, you come up with a bit, you're putting it out there, rubber meets the road. You're going to find out in 2 seconds whether people think it's funny or not.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah.
But if you have the courage to put something out there and try, there's someone over there who you'd like to meet and talk to, somebody who you're attracted to.
Yeah.
You're in a meeting, raise your hand, say, I have an idea.
Well, in the recovery thing you guys were referring to, like, I didn't know Letterman did stand-up prior to being Letterman.
Oh, yeah.
I was just like, man, this guy is so good at making a bomb into the funniest part of the show.
But he hosted so many shows that happened. Like he told an unbelievable story. I forgot on what podcast. Maybe it was WTF about how he was performing in Denver when he was starting out in the late 70s. And they got him a car to drive him to the first night of the gig. And he goes out there and he performs and it might have been even like dinner theater or something. And he bombs like nobody's business. But he had been bombing and he's like, I had no right to be crushing. And the next day he like got ready for the car to come and they're like, oh no, there's no car coming for you. He bombed so bad he lost the car. Like they're like, you got to get there. So he's like walking down the highway to get to this gig that he's like, I'm going to bomb again.
But at least he put himself out there. Then the Taggart Show teaches us that a lot too. And late in our career, that's the other thing about comedy. You always learn stuff about yourself if you keep trying to create new stuff. The Taggart Show has taught me and Randy how to try a joke in front of a full audience. And if it fails, you come out on the other side. You live through the failure. You live to tell another joke. You're like, okay. All right. So then you can tolerate any silence in anything. If you're I tried this, they're not all going to work.
Also, I like when jokes don't work in Taggart because it shows you that it's not so easy.
When they do laugh, it's legit.
It's more earned.
It's earned. So there's something in that living through the failure. Living through failures, coming out on the other side of sitting in your worst nightmare.
The thing that was interesting, because you guys are sports guys.
Yes.
The thing that I find fascinating is I didn't watch tennis for a long time. I just kind of lost interest at one point. Obviously, I watched a lot of tennis growing up, hence the McEnroe thing. My dad liked McEnroe. My mom liked Borg.
Oh, my God. That's an unbelievable.
Tells you everything you need to know about both.
Never voted for the same president. Here we are. And so I saw Roger Federer play, and I was just like, I got to watch this guy before he retires. I need to watch as much of this guy as I can.
It's amazing.
And then watching him and being like, holy shit, I can't imagine a tennis player being any better than this guy. And then,
Nadal.
but with Nadal, but then just like being like, oh no, this is a human.
Right.
And these guys, it's not like they've had a lobotomy and they don't feel pressure. They handle pressure and they harness pressure.
Or they don't.
Yeah, or they don't.
Or they don't. I mean, reading Agassi's book was amazing. Watching Fire and Ice, which was the documentary about Borg and McEnroe, specifically about that Wimbledon in 81, that was amazing.
I mean, Borg tried to take his own life eventually. We thought he was the ice. We thought he was the cool.
Yeah,
Borg was a hothead when he was a kid and realized that
Same with Federer. Federer had a temper problem early.
And Borg realized I got to bottle it up, and he did. And I think that is what came out later in life. Like maybe it's better to be McEnroe where you get it all out and it's not bottling up and it comes out.
McEnroe is New York and Borg is L.A. L.A. someone's like, how's it going, man? They walk away and like, this asshole. In New York, they're like, this guy's an asshole right here.
Means
say it to your face.
I just love that that there was a point in time where McEnroe was so concerned with how Borg thought of him. I thought these guys were like mortal enemies. I thought as kids, we grew up watching them. Get him. You hate him, right?
Yeah, you thought they were going to fight.
He loved him.
He wanted to be him.
He wanted his approval. And so
he wanted to be him. Remember, he was like, my hair won't do what his hair is. He put a headband on because he thought that's how I look like Borg. And he's
trying to look like Borg, and he's got a Brillo pad up there. And like McEnroe in the Montreal, in the ramp up to that Wimbledon, he kind of had a fit about something, but that's what he needed to get going. And he's playing Borg, and Borg's a little older than McEnroe. Borg calls McEnroe to the net, and McEnroe's like, oh shit, I'm going to get yelled at by my idol, by this guy. He's going to dress me down. And all Borg said to him, and this is so generous in so many ways, talk about giving and whatnot. All Borg said to him was, it's okay, John. Like, relax. You're getting way too upset over the smallest thing. Like, let it go.
Wow.
John lets it go, and he beats him in the match. It was the first time Borg had ever been beaten by someone younger than him. It was his very first time that happened. It would foretell what would happen as the rivalry shifted and Borg lost, and then McEnroe's just winning, and McEnroe goes on that 3-year run. That's incredible. But Borg in that moment gave it up to him and said, I can be an asshole and just continue to just let this guy self-destruct, or I can do what's better. That's a very inspirational thing for us. It's better in this moment and just be like, relax, buddy. It's okay. He took care of him in that moment.
There's a fraternity, not many people understand what it's like to do that unless you do that. And I think that you guys being in the stand-up world, on that Laura Bites podcast, people would come and they'd be like, oh, have you been to this comedy condo? And I'd be like, what the fuck is a comedy condo? There was all this jargon, hyper-specific things, I would much rather go through that world feeling like everybody had their backs, ideally.
And that goes back to what we're trying to accomplish, whether we do it or not. There's no formal mentoring program. Although when you think about it, it's completely informed by what Andy Kindler did for us.
Mm-hmm.
Do we really want these other people to do really well? I'm like, yeah, because it's good for comedy.
You do want them to do well.
There's enough for everybody.
Well, I love you guys.
Love you too, man.
You guys make me happy.
Right back at you.
Same.
I always think of when No Country for Old Men won Best Picture and Joel Coen gave his acceptance speech, and he was like, thanks for letting us continue to play in our little corner of the sandbox. And that's kind of the way I feel about this world. It's just like, as long as I get to kind of do what I love with the people that I want to be around.
Same. We feel the same way. That's all we want. Continue to work and do this great thing and continue to open up ideas and write the new mouse bit, whatever that may be.
Yes.
Thank you, Jason and Randy Sklar. I love all the Andy Kindler stuff. The next Tag It is at Largo on July 15th. If you're hearing this, post that. I think they do that show fairly regularly, both at Largo and the Comedy Store. Dumb People Town is also worth checking out. Life and Comedy is recorded at Jett Road Studios. Please rate and review the show and follow it on Instagram and YouTube. Thanks for listening.